Welcome to Natural Habitat Adventures Daily Dose of Nature, View from a Vet, connecting wildlife health with human health. Presented by NatHab Expedition Leaders, Elder Brandeo and Joaris May Jr. I'm your host, Rob Mess. Thank you all so much for being here today. Over to you, Elder.
Thank you so much, Rod. Thank you all for being here. I'm really excited about the talk today because it is not a conventional webinar. Our invited panelist today is bringing an orthodox topic, and we are all connected, plants, wildlife, humans, and planet Earth. His name is Joaris May, which is a wildlife researcher, a professor, that will tell us about his work as a vet, capturing and studying and make science. Unfortunately, we don't have his webcam, but you're going to hear him clear and well. I think you're going to enjoy. It's going to be a really interesting topic. So Joaris, again, thank you very much for being here, for the opportunity. I couldn't be more happy. And so please, if you want to introduce yourself, and we can start. The mic is with you.
Okay, thank you, Elder. Thank you very much, all here. First, sorry for my bad accent. I'm a Brazilian person, so my accent is too bad for you, but I will try to be as clear as possible. So that's not me, that's a jaguar, of course, much beautiful than me. And I'm the guy in the left of your screen trying to collect urine sample from the jaguar. In the right side is Elder. So I will try to talk with you guys about a little bit health between wildlife and human. And I'm in this ugly person, so it's not so important to have my camera working. So you just can see me in a short view. And I'm a wildlife vet. I have a master's degree working in epidemiology. So my research runs about how the agents run in the nature. I will talk a little bit about this with you. I am a member of a couple of groups, but the jaguars that are more important than me. When I'm here, I'm talking about a lot of groups that working with me or support me. So I use a lot of time words like the job, the research. So everything is possible because I have the support. And the more important, I have worked with a lot of people in the field work. I have a lot of biologists, a lot of vets working with me. So I'm just one person that be ambassador this time to talk about health. But when I ask you to think about health, what do you think about? Do you think about illness? Do you think about sick? Or do you think about life? I work with life. I don't work with a sick animal. I don't work with dying animals. I work how the life interact between different animals like carnivores, herbivores, and people. So, and for this, I need to study the habitat. But what is habitat? Do you have idea what I mean when I say habitat? Can you see our place in the universe? Yes, maybe you can see, but can you see our planet in our solar system? Can you see our planets? So if you can see all of this, can you understand everything that I'm talking about? Because can you see the difference between habitats? When you see from space, we can't see the difference because they look the same. They are similar. When we talk about South America, Brazil, where I'm living or I'm talking with you, or your place, when you look far away, everything is the same. But when we go close, we can see the difference. Of course, some of you guys can identify what kind of cities is this, but I just can tell you city. When you look a little bit close, can you see the difference between individuals? Can you see the difference between people? When you look a little bit close, it's really hard to see the difference because they all of them look the same. If you go close, you look at the skin, the fur, of course we can see a small difference, but we can look inside, they are similar. So what I'm trying to tell you that my research the baseline of my research is that we are the same. Doesn't matter the habitat, doesn't matter the species that I'm working with. If most of my job is about carnivores, Maine wolves, jaguars, cougars, but when we talk about dogs and cats, they are really similar. And why it became so important, the kind of research that I'm doing, and why it's so important to have you guys visiting places around the world, because we're looking for temples. So, but what is temple? In the past, we built big pyramids, we built big places, we had the church, we have the temples, and everything that we built, we went to some place and sometimes to find ourselves. And what changed with the time? That people start to look for the nature, to look to themselves. We start to look for a new place to identify. So we are not talking about religion. I'm talking about self-knowledge. And these, for a lot of people, came from nature. So sometimes when you have a really good trip, when you can travel around the world to different places, when you can see the wilderness, sometimes we can find ourselves. So my job is part to help places like this because they have different kind of threats, like the temples, like Notre Dame Church that had a bad past a couple of years ago, or the Pantanal that I was working last month. So all kind of threats came from people. And most of these kind of problems and threats, we learn reading books. So the conservation biology book from Michael Solet start to show for the science how important it is to understand the interaction between all the species in one habitat, in one place. And the other book, Conservation Medicine from Alonso Aguirre and other authors, start to talk about ecological health. But what it means this idea of conservation biology and ecological health? That means that you need to live together. Why? Because when we start to understand all kind of parasite, virus, and bacteria that we live together in the nature, we start to understand health. We are just health because we have all the parasites, because we have all the bacteria. When we broke the control, when we have a high number of one item, then we have disease. So disease is when we lose the equilibrium, when we lose the homeostasis. So when we have everything together, we can understand and we have health people, health animals, health environmental. But how can I direct my work, my job? In Brazil, we use the action plan. We have action plan for different species. So the rules from the federal agency that show us a direction that's better to work. And then we try to work together with different kind of researchers. So why I'm saying this? Because I work the carnivores. And the carnivores, sometimes we have the jaguars, but we have really good models about the domestic animals. So all of you guys that have a cats, you have a small jaguar in your house. If you have a dog, you have a small piece of wolf in your house. And this kind of model that help us to understand wildlife. Why it's so important to have this? Because to the vet school, it's really hard to have contact with the wild animals, but the models like dogs and cats that we learn so much, we can apply this kind of knowledge in the wild animals. And why is so important knowledge? Because we have a lot of information that came from Indians, the past, and we start to read as much as possible, understand their culture. And with the time, we start to understand a little bit about the jaguars, about the wild animals. In the early times, we start to see what happened with the hunters that we had in Brazil. Remember, in Brazil, hunt is different law compared with the US and other countries. Now in Brazil is illegal. But the hunters, they had a lot of knowledge about the jaguars, about their behavior, about them. And that is the way that researchers start to learn about the jaguar. We start with the Indian people, old culture, with the hunters, and with the time, we start to have our own books about different species like lions or mountain lions, start to learn a little bit about this kind of information that we can apply here in Brazil. Because remember that I told you before, if you look at the skin, the fur, they are a little bit different. But when we look them inside, they are the same. So if I don't have information about jaguar, but I have information about lion and desert puma or mountain lion, I can apply the same kind of knowledge here in Brazil. So I spent a little bit time in captivity. I started to work with tigers. George, tigers, they are not cats, but remember, inside they are the same. So then I started to study them, start to learn. I spent a couple of months in the US, in the Front Royal city in Virginia, in the Smithsonian Institute, learning about everything that happens in captivity, because that was a really good school for me. And what kind of knowledge, what kind of skills that I need? I need to learn more and more about anatomy, because when I start to understand how they can hear anything or how the carnivore can see the world, I start to understand a little bit better how I can work with them, since capture, monitoring, and all the procedures that I need to do as a researcher. And I need to learn with their skull. I need to learn with their bones, because all the anatomy information show me information like why they have so powerful jaws, why the jaguar can broke caiman skull, why they have so strong muscles. If I don't have jaguars, I can learn with the small carnivores like this kind of ferrets. And when I start to learn about their anatomy, I can see their bones, I can see their paws, and I can see their tracks. Then I start to understand how a main wolf can make this kind of track, how I can follow the animals in the wild, because I know the track, I know their anatomy, I understand their bone. So all these steps came from my knowledge from captivity. So first, I read something about old knowledge from the Indian, from the hunter, from another biologist, from another species. I
And
jumped to
and that is
okay.
so connected to our work in the field, Juarez. It is so connected to wildlife guiding, learning how to track animals and how we can reconnect to nature, and then give our best on guiding for the client. So that's so interesting, man.
And all of you guys, if you have dogs and cats, just pay attention if they're the tracks, they have the mark of the nails or not. So all this detail that I'm talking here, you can see your own animal in your house or in your neighbor. And all this kind of information needs to be shared with the guides and the people who will work with you, or you have any kind of contact with you. So once I have all this information, I need to understand how to capture. So what happens before capture of the animal? So first, I need to go to the place where we have the carnivore. So where are they? What they are doing? How can I follow them? How can I find? So first, I need to find their tracks. So I need to find fecal marks. I need to find scrape marks. Sometimes I need to find their tracks and try to identify the species. So that's not easy in a place with a lot of grass, with a lot of trees, or full of mud covered by water. It's not easy job, but in sometimes we can identify a species just looking for one track. And this is a kind of exercise that you guys will do in the nature. The problem, the people who work like me with the mammals, we always looking for the ground, trying to see a mark. If you work the bird people, they look for trees, or the primates, they look for trees. But mammal people, usually we just look for the ground, looking for tracks. Other points is really important to understand the research. We need to understand their kind of food. If they eat fruit, if they eat fish, what they kind of, because if I can understand, identify the food that they are looking for, the second step, I can find my goal. The period of the year that I'm looking to work, sometimes it's really good to have water, but sometimes we have too much water in the Pantanal, for example. So it's really important for us to identify the period of the year that I'm looking for my job. And that's important for you. If you understand the period of the year that you see it's easier or better to see the animals on different kind of behavior, you can improve the quality of your trip. With this,
so interesting.
yeah, go ahead.
It was so interesting to be with you 10 years ago, just learning how you start to do this kind of job. And so just looking for the tracks, and imagine you always tell me on a ranch with 53,000 hectares, to imagine one jaguar putting a paw in just one step in one place. I mean, it's really hard. So please continue. It's really interesting how you actually set the camera traps to find the jaguars and then start the next steps.
Yeah, but this happens in Pantanal, but I'm pretty sure that happens in all the place. If you guys that are listening to me, pay attention about the farm or place close to your house. If you want to identify where is the bear, where is the cougar or the lynx, if you know a little bit your place, you would tell me, George, that's the place to set the camera. So of course, I don't have all the knowledge, but the local guys, they're pretty good about this. So they help me a lot of time to show me the place to set the camera. And then after to have a place to set the camera, we have information like this. Of course, that's really good to have information about big cats all the time. But on these pictures, I can see a couple together, a mom nursing a cub. I can see big male that I colored before. I can see young animals walking during the day. I can see pumas just walking the day, and I can see the ocelots at the same spot that we can see different males. So I need to see the pictures to identify how they walk, where they walk, and what they are looking for. So if I have place that I have a couple, if I have place with cubs, I need a different mind to think about my next step. It's really important to capture an animal, or you need to avoid that place. So all the kind of the questions came from the knowledge that we have from camera trap. And camera trap, they work really fine. So the next step, I need to trap. And trap is always really hard, because how a person from US, Darren Simpson, told me, the animals can show you something that you have no idea that was wrong about your trap. So you can prepare everything perfect, but then we have a problem and we don't capture. So let me tell you, like 80% of the time, the animals, they have success over me. The way that I used to set to capture jaguars here in Brazil is that we call foot snare. And the foot snare is the same system used all around the world. I'm part of Panthera team, and I work in all Latin America, in Mexico, Belize, Chile, Argentina, Brazil, Colombia, using the same system. And that's why we have the spring that avoid any kind of problem, and we have swivels to avoid any kind of injury in the animal. So it's really successful, and we never had in 15 years any kind of injury to the animals. But I need to prepare this, set the trap, and then I have to work the camouflage. And the camouflage, that's the hard part, because how Elder was telling, if I have the big Pantanal, if I have the big Amazon, and I need a jaguar set the pole exactly here, so sometimes a little bit arrogance, sometimes it's skills, and sometimes it's just luck. But that thing happens. And so we set the trap, put the place. I work a little bit, I make like a garden just to guide the jaguar on this direction. And then we set trap transmitters. Why trap transmitters? Because I need to check every 30 minutes if we have any kind of capture. Because once we have a jaguar at the trap, we need to run with the team, and we work to an anesthesia. So it's fast, but sometimes what's normal, we don't capture anything. And then early in the morning, you have like a poop on top of the snare that the cougar showed that you are not in good place to capture, because the puma is much smarter than you. And these things happens all the time. Not the pup, but the jaguar and the puma be smarter than me. But with all the knowledge that we have, we wrote a paper. And this paper is about how to use the foot snare to capture the large phthalates. But sometimes we have success. Or in snares or box traps, we capture one animal, and then the first thing that we need to do is check everything is fine, how is the animal, how is the level of stress. On this time, we need to call to a vet. This case is my son Pedro, and he is checking the anesthesia to use on the fox inside the small trap. But we need to prepare the dart. So the dart is a safety way to use the anesthesia. We prepare. I'm working here on this picture with a big vet here in Brazil. He is the boss of the carnivore department of the federal agency here in Brazil. So we just preparing the darts, and then I shoot the dart. If it's possible, I go by car, but sometimes I need to go by foot. I need to go close and make sure that the dart works fine. Darting the animal starts to sleep. So first thing, I need to confirm that I have the dart fine, and then I need to check if the jaguar is sleeping. That's the most amazing time, because we are not sure if the jaguar is sleeping or not. But how I'm the vet, I need to go there and touch the jaguar and make sure that everything is okay. If it's not completely sleeping, I have the pulse syringe, and then I can supplement the dose and make sure that everything is fine. Once the jaguar is sleeping, I just need to remove the snare and check if everything is fine. One really important process, we need to use gloves. All these pictures came from before the COVID-19, so that time we didn't use masks. But now everybody needs to use a mask, because we have the bad situation with big cats in zoos in US, and now we are not sure about what happens with wild animals. So all the time that I'm working on captures now, I need to cover my face with mask. But gloves, since we start to work, because I want to avoid any kind of agent coming from the wild animals to us, or coming from us to the wild animals. So all the time we need to use gloves. This is my office, that is the way that I have to work. So I have in the back of the truck, I have a Jaguar. In the truck, I have all my equipment, all the material that I need to collect samples and work with the proceeding. So I need to pack everything in my backpack. Some of you guys have experience with the vets working the domestic animals with the Prezi in a good place, in a hospitals, a lot of space, everything is white. So I don't have space, everything is small, is packed, and I need to work as fast as possible, because usually we have 40 minutes. And all my proceedings, that's really important, because we have usually people coming to see the animals. Most of the time, we have the local guys that they can see. Imagine, we work in one farm for 10 years, and some of the guys, they never saw a jaguar close. If they have the opportunity to see the jaguar as close as possible, they start to see the jaguars a little bit different. Remember, when we start to see the universe, and then when we came close, we start to see different with my presentation. So to them, it's the same, because usually they just can see a jaguar, a spotted cat running, and then they can go close. Other thing that you used to do, we have a course. So we have people coming to learn with us when they have some kind of practice to learn how to work with the wild animals, and then they can go to another place and improve. And a lot of time, we have people visiting the project, and they have this kind of opportunity to come close and see people working on conservation in the practice.
And this is really amazing. I mean, everything you do is really safe. One thing that I have seen for many times in the capturing when I was there, and especially the involvement of local people. I mean, this is really important in your work, but also you do this in a very good way to show to people. So for tourism as well, and for local people that live in the area, I mean, this is really a thing to highlight of your work. So that is really important.
Remember, everyone, we are here in our house, but the jaguar is there with them on their house, and they live close. So if you don't work with them, if you don't improve their knowledge about the jaguar, that just means I can write a really good paper, but the jaguar will be under threat all the time. So sometimes They are sometimes, I would say all the time, they are much more important working with them do can work with us. So local people, they can make all the difference about the future of the jaguars. Once we start to work, the first thing that I like to do is cover jaguar's eyes, because the kind of medicine, the drug that I use, usually they can pay attention about what's going around. Remember, I'm just need to sedate them, just to collect samples, and I'm not going to work on surgery. So I just need to relax them, but it's really safe for the animal. And sometimes I can have like a pregnant female nursing or pregnant. So I cannot use hard drugs on my anesthesia. I put some drops on their eyes just to check if they have some kind of injury, if they have any kind of problem, and I keep their eyes covered. On top of that, you can see a black jaguar that I worked in the past. First, as a vet, I need to do my clinical evaluation. I check the fur, I check the head, I check the paw that we caught the animal. I check everything around and need to pay attention about all the details. In the meantime, I check their teeth, because their teeth can show me their age, how they are health, and what kind of life that they have. When they broken one canine, that means they broke their canine. They broke their tooth. Not doesn't mean disease, or that doesn't mean a problem. Just showing me their way of life, or sometimes can show an old man like this main wolf, like my grandpa, without teeth on top. And other important part of our job is to set the radio collar. I know a lot of people hate radio collars because we prefer to take good pictures without radio collars, and I know all the problems. Guys, I can tell you, we change this, we try to change the size, we are trying to change the color, we are trying to do as much as possible to have a better picture of the animals. But the jaguars and the other animals can be saved using really good radio collars. Why? They can show us the place that I can work on deforestation, for example, because the jaguar, the animal, they don't use. When we set the radio collar, we can show the exact spot that need to be protected. And most of the time, I'm working in a private land and outside of national park, because in the national park, they are protected. But outside, we are in the war, we are fighting all the time. So that's why it's so important to have the radio collar. Other point, how I work with the parasites, I can try to understand where they can collect their parasites, trying to look the information from radio collar. Once we have the radio collar, we start to check the biometry, check all the size, how big is the animal, the weight. For this, we are collecting all the information all the time from all the animals. And I start to set the pulse oximeter. That's a small equipment that I have, and help me to control how is the heart rate and how is the oxygen to my animals. I work the electrocardiography for animals. So this picture we have a nutria on top and a jaguar under there, a otter actually on top and a jaguar. So it doesn't matter the size of the animal. That's a program that I have on my cell phone to check their hearts. We need to check their weight. Doesn't matter if it's a small puma or a big jaguar or a big female. So in this case, the male jaguar on the right side had 137 kilos. Can you see the difference between comparing with a small female jaguar, how difficult it is to check just the weight in the nature? I need to collect samples, how I'm a vet. I love blood to check all the information that is possible. I almost like a vampire. I know sometimes people just look me bad, but I'm not Dracula. I'm just a person who needs my samples to run research. It was so important. With this kind of information, I can write papers and I can share information around the world, like this paper that talk about the hematology, comparing Maine wolves inside the national park outside, and we can see difference. In this paper, I was working with the researchers all around the world just to describe the first hematology and blood chemistry for Maine wolves in the nature. And I need to do my slides, so it's not easy to collect the small blood, drop of blood, put in the slide, and then you can see here in the left side, it was perfect, but the flies came and drank all my blood. So this thing happens all the time. Mosquitoes and fly, I need to work these lights, cover, put it someplace inside the car, because other way the flies and the mosquitoes can drink my blood and everything become a big mess. And sometimes we can find a new blood parasites like this filaria that we found in one of these lights that I'm working with. Glucose test is the same glucose test that we have in our house. So this equipment is a human equipment. I need to check in the field how is the glucose level, because it's so important to understand about their healthy, not about their sickness. Remember, I'm looking for health. If I'm working in a place that's really hot, sorry, or in a place that's really cold, sometimes we can have hypothermia or hypothermia. So on this time, or we work with the blanket or with ice and try to control their temperature. In sometimes, some place we have ultrasound that can help us a lot. Usually I don't have. This one came from US that the company shared with the Smithsonian Institute, shared with us for a short period. And we did a lot of information looking for reproductive research. I need to check about the semen collect, or that's more important to check about the reproductive phase of the female. On this moment, I'm collecting milk, and then I send to the lab. The lab showed me the formula, the composition of the milk, and then we can share with the zoos to give a better main wolf milk for the cubs that they have any kind of problem at the zoos. Another important information that I will collect with urine. So doesn't matter male or female, we try to collect all kind of urine to compare. And here, just for you to see, that's two urine that we caught from pumas in Colombia 2 years ago, and just they're both healthy, but you can see the difference between color, a little bit reddish, another one a little bit yellowish, but they both are really healthy. On top, I have a really famous researcher from US here in Brazil. He worked with Maine wolves and golden lion tamarins. Now he's one of the person in charge, Dr. James Jitz, helping me and teach me how to work with this information. I used to collect fecal samples, and that's the thing that most of people they don't like, but it's important because we can, from fecal samples, I can find parasites, I can understand their diet, I can understand their hormones and see everything about the information. We collect hair because with the hair we can understand a little bit about like the level of mercury on jaguar's fur. This was a paper that we wrote years ago here in Brazil, comparing the Pantanal North and South, and the place with the golden mine, we had a high level of mercury. And this is a paper that we wrote in Belize because we identify the first time bacteria like a rickettsia on ticks, and that's really important because it's one kind of like a Rocky Mountain fever that we are looking for all Latin America, and we are trying to identify their problems. Other research that we are running is try to understand the rainfall influence on ticks. So sometimes we can see the quantity or the level of the ticks that's bigger or less. That's important to give this information to the guides and help you guys to decide the place to go with not so many ticks.
That's really important, Pantanal, for the
yes.
one last part.
And other important information that we use to collect is about dermatobiosis. That's not so common to be described, and we did the first time here in Brazil this year the first description about dermatobiosis on jaguars. We can see different cases of mange in Maine wolves. So all the information, the sample that we try to collect, is just try to understand. And the mange is important because it usually came from dogs. So we start to understand the interaction between domestic animals and wildlife. So all this information that I'm showing you is how we work looking for different things in the wild, try to understand how they interact with domestic animals and with us. Once everything is done, everything is finished, we need to ask to the vet, and if the vet say it's okay, radio color it's okay, we collect all the samples, the animal is fine. If you have a trap, you put the animal inside the box trap again. If you just work in the foot snares, we just leave the animal in the place and wait for recovery. But other way, you put in box trap, wait a little bit, and then we release the animal. Once we have the animal released, we start to follow their radio colors. We start to see where they are going, what kind of behavior that they have, and then we start to understand why they have so many clusters, why they don't use open area, why it's so important to have areas with conservation, with forests, because the jaguar, they don't like open area. They can use water, close to the water, yes, but usually they stay most of the time in the forest. They don't like to use open area. And we have a lot of points at the same spot, like a cluster. If you go there, maybe we can find a carcass or we can find cubs. So following the animals, doing our job with the satellite telemetry, we start to learn so much information. We start to understand, because sometimes we say that the jaguar, they live by themselves. That's true, but they have communication between them. In some place, they can have like a community that they can talk. They don't talk by words. They talk by urine, by fecal samples, by tracks, by vocalization, but they talk. So they have a social organization that we don't understand pretty well. Once everything is done, the vet didn't finish the job, so I need to go to the lab, work in the centrifuge, separating samples, and have all my information packed in small bottles that I can share with. Today, I'm working with around 12 different labs in Brazil and some places in Europe and the US too. So can you imagine how much information one drop of the blood can give us to the future? And all this information came from papers, came from publication. And why so important? Because we are thinking about the future. I'm not looking for the sick animals, I'm looking for healthy animals. And all these help us to work on reintroduction projects here in Brazil. And we are trying to work together with Argentina, and maybe in a short period, we are working with researchers in US to work on reintroduction of jaguars in US. All this information, guys, is the kind of information of papers that we are writing about, that your guides, that people that work with you give you and share with you in the field. Do you have idea how many hours these guys they have to read or spend with researchers like me just to talk? Of course, sometimes drinking a beer, have a good dinner, and just talking and learning to share with you. Of course, it's not easy for all of you to read all this information. We have magazines, we have guides, but most of the time, these guys, they need to learn a lot of things about conservation. That's why it's so important to have companies like Natural Habitat Adventures work on conservation, looking for communities and try to improve places and help, because every one of you that come to some place that spend hours with me just seeing a jaguar, you become ambassador. So Natural Habitat Adventures help these, creating a lot of ambassadors to help different countries like mine. Just here in Brazil, I know a couple of names that like Zappa, Diogo, Fred, and Helder, that I know all of these guys. I have more contact with Helder and Diogo, but all of them, they have a lot of information, shared, studied, learning, or many years in the field working with us, and can share with you in all the visits.
Yeah, Joari, I mean, it's just all connected, right? The topic of your presentation, I mean, natural environment to provide habitat for wildlife, to humans can actually get benefits from the natural environment as water, soil, and so on. And then ecotourism here, people coming to see all that and share the knowledge that you are bringing up with science, right?
Yes. So science is not on top. Science just one base. So the local guys is one base, animals, the big base and nature, but ecotourism is another base point. So if we have all the things connected together, maybe we have a future. And my future is doing my PhD that I'm running right now. On the left side, you have the name of a lot of jaguars. You have the name of disease on top. You can see a couple positives and negative of the animals. You can see that I need to go to DNA sequencing to check all of them. So my future is keep doing my job, that's research, to give you guys information enough, and maybe you can work in conservation future together. So next time in nature, remember, you be in the temple. You see individuals, but they are part of the community. You see habitats, different one, but you be part of the big universe, and you be in my office. So you are welcome all the time to come to my office. Thank you guys very much. Sorry for the long presentation. I try to be as short as possible, but I try to remember you that I don't look for sick animals. I look for health, like this big jaguar that I follow him for 13 years when he was really old and died for natural cause, not for human threats. And these things happen a lot, and I'm trying to learn to share with you in the future all the knowledge that I raised along of the years.
Thank you, Juarez. Thank you very much. That was wonderful. Thank you. You were sharp on time.
Good.
Well, thank you so much. Now, before we start the question and answer session, I'd like to remind everyone that you can submit your questions via the question field in your control panel. With that, let's get to it. We have some questions. So, how do you protect the jaguars from panicking and hurting themselves when they get snared in the leg trap? Do you ever have heart attacks or anything like that?
No, that thing doesn't happen. First, we prepare the place to set the trap. That's really safe. You don't have it any kind of trees or water or rocks. So it's a clean area. And we have the trap transmitter. So in around 20 minutes, we arrive at the place. And usually it's really fast. And we never ever had any kind of problem in the capture. So remember, it's the same system that they use to capture tigers, mountain lions, and lions around the world.
Great, that's great to hear. Now, if you do capture, when you do capture one of these animals, if they're hurt or sick, do you treat them?
Okay, if I have any kind of hurt that came from human intervention, yes. But if I have any problem that came from jaguar's fight, no. I'm just an observer. I'm not like a god. I'm not going there to decide what's going on to the animal. Of course, I clean the hurt. I remove if we have like a parasite. I clean everything, but I never ever use antibiotic because other way I can interview and could be worse in the future. I'm going there just to learn a little bit, and I can tell you I'm just a child trying to learn, comparing all the quality that we have in the nature.
Thank you. Now, Joris, let me ask you, what got you started on this career path? Have you always been interested in wild animals, or was it part of your family? What brought you here?
Okay, when I was young, I was born in the southern Brazil. I'm really close to Uruguay and Argentina, and I used to go to the zoo that we have here, and it just was fantastic for me to see tigers and lions all the time. I never ever thinking to be a vet, actually. I was just looking for big cats, how to work the big cats. And I did everything that was possible. I jumped to the zoo, I started to work there, and one day I'd open a cage after some job, and I make sure that I was not going to release the animal, just put in another den. So after that, I say, no, I'm going to the wild. I jumped to the wildlife, and I became wildlife vet for 15 years now. So it was just a coincidence of the life.
Fascinating. Well, you seem to love it. Now,
Yeah,
let me ask.
sorry, I paid a lot of a big price when we decided to work in the wildlife in Brazil because it means no money. But I can tell you, Rob, I'm really happy to do what I'm doing.
Can I ask you, have you ever been hurt or injured on the job?
Yes, I was bited by a mosquito and I got leishmaniosis.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah,
Well,
so
we're glad.
I had a bad time at the hospital when I came back to Brazil, but was years ago. And I'm not ready for the next, but I'm ready from the leishmaniosis now. But I never. People usually think about the problem with jaguars or snakes, and they don't understand why their guides need to protect them against mosquitoes and ticks. So if I can tell you to worry more about mosquitoes than a jaguar. Believe me, they are dangerous.
Wow, that's good to know. Can I ask, are you seeing more human to animal or animal to human infection? Um, are the precautions you're taking now just because of COVID, or is there more?
Rob, actually, I think that we learn at the university the word zoonosis, that disease can jump from animals and people. I think that we are thinking wrong because the bacteria or the virus, they don't care. Remember, under the skin, we are the same. So for a long time, what happens sometimes that we never check the jaguar's blood for some kind of disease. I just start to check now, and that's why I identify. So, but if you ask in the past, they can tell you a lot of information about different kind of problems in the jaguars, but nobody wrote about this. So what's happening now? I just started to check. Of course, in the past was impossible because nobody have money to run this kind of research. And then I have to ask for money to look for disease on jaguars because jaguars can show me what kind of parasite or virus that we can identify in some place else. So I just start to ask. I did my research and then I have my result. But if you look at back, I'm pretty sure that's disease that can jump from people and animals. That's much more common that we used to see in the papers.
Can I ask you, what is the difference, or is there a difference between the blood of a maned wolf that's in a protected area versus a private area?
Yeah. Okay. My paper showed that in the outside the private in the private area they had ticks similar to dogs, and the tick that is similar from dogs live all the cycle in one host. But the tick in the nature, the other species, they change 3 times the host, so they don't drink so much blood. So outside, the animal had some kind of anemia or changed the erythrocytes, the red cells, it became a little bit smaller. So because of this, I could identify the difference between outside maned wolves and inside national park maned wolves.
Very interesting. Do the maned wolves ever mate with domestic dogs?
No, they have different number of chromosomes. They are not possible to have in any kind of hybrid. Of course, until now, Rob, I don't have this kind of all information, but everything that I know from the facts of the science, no.
Great. Now, when you collar the animals before you release them, how well are these tolerated? Are all the animals okay with it?
Yeah, usually we can see jaguars hunting the next day. Maned wolves, they just leave the box trap, start to eat. We never ever had any kind of injury or problem. Of course, we follow the animal for 15 days really close, but after that they go fine. And other thing that I forgot to tell you, Rob, that all the radio collar they have the drop off for after 1 year. They open by themselves and follow down in the ground. So we don't maintain the radio collar for all life of the animal, just for the period of the battery it's working. After that, the radio collar follows down.
Wow, that is so fascinating. Let me ask you one more question. Is the jaguar your most favorite animal, or is there another one that you love, just like the jaguar?
Okay, tigers. I think that I need to remember when I was young at the zoo in front of the enclosure of the tiger, and I pay attention a lot. And of course, in the past, we didn't have so many movies about jaguars, mostly about tigers. So I always pay attention. I dream one day maybe to see them in the wild and even work with them. But tigers, they are magnificent for me.
They are magnificent animals.
Yeah.
Well, I'm afraid that's the last question that we have time for today. So I'd like to throw it back to you for any closing comments you guys might have.
Thank you very much, Juarez, again. It was wonderful. Thank you all for being here. So I hope someday we can see each other again fast enough on Pantanal to see some jaguars together. Thank you, Juarez.
Thank you all of you guys. If you want, I share here my email and my contact on Instagram. I'm welcome to answer any kind of question in any time if you want to talk and know a little bit about my research. I work in different projects, but I concentrate in an epidemiology program of conservation of cats in Brazil and all Latin America now because they need my help. So I try to do. And I would like to invite all of you guys to see projects around your house, not just around the world or different place, but I'm pretty sure that all the wildlife needs help, even close of you.
Wow, thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to present for us today. And I'd also like to thank everyone who tuned in today. Join us tomorrow for our next Daily Dose of Nature. You can check out this week's lineup, including registration links on our website at nathab.com/webinars. We did record today's presentation, and we will have the replay available on our website soon. With that, I will conclude today's webinar. Goodbye, everybody. We'll see you tomorrow.